Boutiot, that is the journalist at France 24, who was a Facebook friend of this guy who, for the purposes of the report, has been called Salahuddin. That's not his real name. So about 5 years ago, they first met and they became contacts. They ate together on a couple of occasions, shared jokes together. And all of a sudden, it pops up on her Facebook that he's fighting jihad in Syria. They begin a conversation around 3 hours a day across about 10 days, where she decides that she's going to try to tell this guy's story, unbeknownst to him. So she's sort of torn between her sort of journalistic impulse to tell a story. He's one of about 300 French nationals fighting jihad in Syria.
Many are very open on their social media sites.
That's right.
Of what their activities.
That's right. So this was an opportunity to understand his motives, his lifestyle, exactly how this works on a day-to-day basis. But let's take a listen first of all to Charlotte Boutiot talking to France 24's French channel earlier today.
It was quite disconcerting because I knew him. It was very complicated to write the story because I was torn between my feelings and a journalist's objectivity, which I had to constantly keep in mind so as not to exaggerate my personal involvement, so as not to betray our personal closeness. So it was a complicated exercise and somewhat difficult.
So it's quite a long piece, Claire. So if viewers want to read that, France24.com. Just one nod to an editorial written by Sylvain Attal about that, saying, you know, that this is a 27-year-old man brought up in the Paris suburbs, and he found his raison d'être, a new raison d'être in this jihadist struggle. He is unmoved by the values of tolerance, emancipation, solidarity espoused by the West, and no longer believes in their sincerity. So there are certainly broader societal questions raised by this man choices, and it's certainly an interesting piece to look at on the France 24 website today.
Exactly, visit that to check it out. Now, you mentioned the front page of Libération. A lot going on there. The editor resigned today amid a crisis at the newspaper.
That's right. This is the main left-wing newspaper in France. And as you said, Nicolas Demérand stood down. 4 votes of no confidence he's had in recent times. The paper is undergoing quite a lot of financial difficulties. It lost about €1 million in 2013 after sales plummeted by 15%. So there is a real clash at the moment between the editorial staff and the shareholders. It's part owned by Edouard de Rothschild and an estate developer, Bruno Ledoux, who want to take it down a sort of a business track whereby they use the city centre headquarters as a cultural space. They sort of play on the heritage of the newspaper. It was set up by Jean-Paul Sartre. So they want to sort of play on all of that and make a cultural space in the centre of Paris, move the editorial staff out to Bagnolet in the suburbs. And on Saturday, last weekend, this was the front page of the newspaper, where they said, we are not a cultural space, we are a newspaper. We don't agree with this sort of business model whereby you take us sort of slightly off the journalistic track to make the business profitable. Now, the editor, or now former editor, Nicolas Demérand, say, look, The Guardian, amongst other newspapers, have cafes and they use their editorial space for other economic activities to try to make the whole thing profitable and keep the whole ship afloat. And we're living in times now where, you know, people are increasingly going online. That was also part of the plan rolled out by the shareholders to try to keep the newspaper afloat. But the staff are very annoyed that journalism seems to be taking a back seat in all of these plans to rejuvenate and make the newspaper profitable. So it's quite a public spat, and indeed Nicolas Demérand wrote a piece in Le Monde today, a rival newspaper, to try to explain his position, because actually the newspaper decided not to publish some of his opinions on this last week. So it's an extraordinarily public spat within a newspaper that illustrates the broader woes with the print press at the moment. And just one final detail on that, François Hollande said that he's quite preoccupied by the situation. Left-leaning government, left-leaning newspaper, and indeed, as some in the government have said, when a left-wing paper is in trouble or possibly bankrupt for a socialist government, this is a political problem. So indeed, François Hollande might try to get involved and suggest a financial solution of some kind or other, encourage an investor to come on board, something like that.
And finally, the odd choice of song by Mary J Blige at the White House Day dinner in honour, of course, of François Hollande.
Now, we spoke yesterday about Stephen Colbert, who famously slammed François Hollande in a comic sketch over his love life woes last month. He was sitting second next to François Hollande at the state dinner. But this detail missed my attention, and indeed the French media have picked up on it today. Mary J Blige, let's roll these pictures. She was invited to sing at the very swish event. There you can see Mary J Blige Blige taking to the stage. And we don't actually have the ditty here on BFM TV's footage. You can see the two men there enjoying the music. But you know what she sang? She sang Ne me quitte pas by Jacques Brel, 1959 classic, which is perhaps the saddest breakup song of all time, Claire. So quite an odd choice by Mary J Blige. Either she was being very unfair to try to, to choose this song just weeks after François Hollande very publicly split with Valérie Trierweiler, or she didn't really know the meaning of the words or whatever. In any case, it amused a lot of people.
A little bit downbeat all the same, wasn't it, James? James Creedon, thank you very much for bringing us tonight's Media Watch.
Thanks, Claire.
And do stay with us. More news coming up as the Syria peace talks stall in Geneva. On the ground, there's with the war, there shows no sign of letting up with the conflict. We'll be taking you to our regional correspondent. She'll be giving us the latest grim numbers. Stay with us for that.